Well, college football week one officially in the books, and it was slammed shut by the Duke Blue Devils. The quick reaction show coming out of that at Wallace Wade Stadium and the scene in Durham after beating Clemson. Number 9 Clemson 28-7, absolutely astounding. Wallace Wade, one of my favorite stadiums. Rose Bowl actually held there shortly after Pearl Harbor, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. Just some quick thoughts on this upset. And it's kind of hard to believe. I mean, this is a 9-4 Duke team playing tonight that played Clemson. 9-4, people thought it was maybe thanks to softer scheduling and that it can't be that quick of a turnaround for Mike Elko. Mike Elko now just in his second year as the head coach of the Duke Blue Devils. But apparently what he's doing is pretty legitimate, and a lot of questions now about the Clemson Tigers. Garrett Riley, and again, I'm just going down the quick list of notes I took throughout the game, and we'll expand on it further throughout the week. Garrett Riley, younger brother of Lincoln Riley, brought in to be the offensive coordinator for Clemson. A really, really gigantic move. Dabo Swinney criticized for not really making a splash higher at that position when he gave the job to Brandon Streeter a couple of years ago. He goes out and he very quietly and efficiently gets Garrett Riley to come in and revamp that offense. Well, it hasn't really taken hold yet. Clemson looks very pedestrian offensively. Cade Klubnik, the guy taking over for DJU, who's now at Oregon State, looked fantastic over the weekend. A lot of questions about that guy. Cade Klubnik, 27 of 43, 209 yards. He had a touchdown, had an interception, rushed for 34 yards. How much of that's his fault, though? How much of that's his fault? A couple of the issues that were present with Clemson last year. One, an offensive line that is definitely not elite, and then wide receivers who can't get separation, who can't be playmakers, impact guys like we've seen Clemson have at that position in the past. They're not there. And I'm wondering if that's the new normal for Clemson going forward. Seems to me that Clemson hasn't recovered from that season opening loss against Georgia 2 years ago in Charlotte. Season opening game, they lost on a pick six by DJU. And I said then that we were going to learn more about Dabo Swinney as a head coach than we have throughout the entirety of his tenure with the Tigers. I said over the next 12 months, maybe over the next 2 years, we're going to learn a lot. And indeed we have. Clemson winning a lot of games, double-digit win season, but still there's a difference between winning 10 games and being one of the Elite Four, being one of the teams that goes to the playoff with an opportunity to win a national championship, as we had seen Clemson do year after year after year after year prior to that. It just looks so different. There's nothing special about this team. Offensive line does not look elite again. The wide receivers, the skill positions at large, except for perhaps Will Shipley, Moffitt, solid player also, they just don't look elite. They don't look like one of the top four. And it's top four right now to get into the playoff, but they just don't seem special. Clemson had won 25 of its previous 30 against Duke, to properly put that series into perspective. Clemson has now lost 3 of its last 4. Started last season 10-1 and lost 3 of its last 4. And that one victory was the ACC championship, but still 3 of 4. That's problematic. That's one way to put it. It's problematic. Looking at it from the Duke side, first win over a top 10 opponent since 1989, since the visor, Steve Spurrier, was coaching at Duke. So that in and of itself significant. First, and this one really sums up the program of Duke football over the years, what it's been. This is the first time, now this is only the third time in school history, third time that Duke has beaten a team ranked in the Associated Press top 25 by 20 or more points in history. And the first time since 1944. So a monumental night in Durham, to say the least. I'm going down my list now. Just some other quick thoughts. They're chanting, "We want Bama" in the student section. Mike Elko. All this goes back to Mike Elko. And I knew Mike Elko during his time at Wake Forest. He came there with Dave Clawson. They had coached together at a couple of different spots leading up to that. He is part of that trend, that transformation at Wake Forest when they went to the first bowl game under Dave Clawson. They went to the Military Bowl. They played Temple. Then that was his last game. He left there to go be the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, spent 1 year, then went to Texas A&M to be the defensive coordinator for Jimbo Fisher before going and succeeding the great David Cutcliffe at Duke. Mike Elko is a good coach. Mike Elko knows defense. Mike Elko knows how to run a program. Again, he's got that Dave Clawson model of being just mindful of the details, sweat the small stuff, but also be able to build interpersonal relationships and connect with your players and try to help them believe into building something more than just a team, but a culture, a program, something that resonates throughout the community and touches the alumni base. I'm so impressed with what he has done. Now I guess he goes 9-4, 10-5 during his tenure at Duke so far, just entering the second year. They've got Lafayette coming up at Wallace Wade Stadium. I have to think Duke's going to move to 2-0. Clemson gets an opportunity to bounce back. Charleston Southern, the sacrificial lamb, one would presume, at Death Valley this coming weekend. Just an amazing night of football, amazing week of football. Week one of college football so far, absolutely astounding. The college football season's great. Think about this. One more thought before we call it a night. Florida State. Think about the weekend Florida State had. Watched Florida look absolutely horrendous in primetime against Utah on Thursday. That was one of the most ill-prepared football teams I've ever seen. Billy Napier perhaps should be concerned at this juncture. No doubt he is concerned. Sunday night, Florida State dominates LSU, number 5 team in the country. Tremendous effort, especially in the second half by the Seminoles. And then they watch Duke beat up Clemson for the better part of the fourth quarter. Florida State's got to feel pretty good about itself right now with regards to not only winning the ACC, but going to the college football playoff. So just a whole lot more to think about as we chop up this game and all the other games from over the weekend. I'm looking forward to doing that in our next show. And then we'll start to pivot into week 2 the further down the week we go. A couple of quick notes about this game. 3 turnovers for Clemson, 2 for Duke. Time of possession, Clemson won time of possession. Clemson had 29 first downs, only 17 for Duke. I mean, by every metric, Clemson was superior except for turnovers. Now, it did have the 2 missed field goals, which, make of that what you will, could have played a factor into their mindset. Really impressed with Ryland Leonard, quarterback for the Duke Blue Devils. Not a great night passing the ball, 17 of 33, 175 yards. He didn't have a touchdown, didn't have an interception, did have 98 yards rushing, and included that 44-yard touchdown in the second half. Move the chains. And I know it's cliche, but you want that kind of guy. You need that kind of guy who's going to move the chains. He's not going to light up the stat sheet like so many other quarterbacks do nowadays, but he's moving the chains, and he could be the perfect quarterback at the perfect time for this transformative era that's happening in Durham. So, again, we got Duke beating Clemson 28-7. A lot to unpack from that. Still a lot to unpack from so many of the other games. Week 1 of college football, and then week 2, we're going to start chopping it up sooner than you think. Give me a follow on Twitter, X, at ScottH4456. But until next time, be safe.